Stress is one of the most underestimated leadership challenges in modern organizations. It quietly shapes behavior, decision-making, communication style, and emotional presence. Let me repeat that again. Stress is one of the most underestimated leadership challenges in modern organizations. It quietly shapes behavior, decision-making, communication style, and emotional presence. When pressure becomes constant, leaders lose clarity, patience, and creativity, as well as perspective. Teams feel it immediately. Productivity declines, relationships strain, and trust weakens. Stress itself is not the weakness. Unmanaged stress is the real problem. Now, this episode focuses on practical, realistic ways leaders can manage stress mindfully while remaining effective, grounded, and human in demanding workplace environments. These strategies are designed for leaders who want sustainable performance without burnout or emotional exhaustion in everyday professional settings. Welcome to Coaching Talks, folks. I'm Richard Fontanie, and this is where leadership development meets practical workplace reality. This podcast is designed for professionals who want tools they can use immediately, without jargon or unrealistic expectations. Today's topic explores stress management and mindful practices that fit into real leadership schedules. We will focus on breathing, brief meditation practices, and simple awareness techniques to reduce stress without shifting any kind of responsibility. Now, if this conversation supports your leadership journey, please subscribe and share the podcast with others. Consistent growth happens when practical insight meets consistent application. So let's explore how mindful leadership strengthens performance, decision-making, and presence under pressure, particularly in modern-day workplaces. Now, stress is not inherently negative. In fact, it helps leaders meet deadlines, solve problems, and take decisive action. The issue arises when stress becomes chronic, and chronic stress keeps the nervous system in a constant state of alertness. Over time, this reduces cognitive flexibility, emotional regulation, and listening capacity. Leaders under chronic stress often react rather than respond, and mindfulness interrupts this cycle. It creates space between stimulus and response, and that space is where leadership maturity develops. Mindful leaders remain aware of pressure without being controlled by it, and this awareness protects clarity and judgment and relational effectiveness in high-stakes workplace situations. Now let's explore 5 leadership strategies that will do just that. The first leadership strategy is intentional breathing. Now, under stress, the breathing becomes shallow and rapid, signals danger to the brain, and this keeps leaders in fight or flight mode. Slow, intentional breathing signals safety instead. A simple practice is inhaling through the nose for 4 seconds and exhaling through the mouth for 6 seconds. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system and quickly reduces stress. Leaders can use this before meetings, difficult conversations, or decisions. 3 intentional breaths can shift the emotional state, improve focus, and restore composure within moments, especially in demanding situations. The second leadership strategy is mindful awareness. Now, stress often accumulates unnoticed until it spills over into frustration or disengagement. And mindful leaders regularly notice physical tension, emotional shifts, and thought patterns. And this awareness prevents escalation instead of snapping, withdrawing, or rushing decisions. And in this case, leaders pause. Now, pausing is not a weakness. It is a self-regulation. Leaders who practice awareness adjust accordingly. They improve their emotional intelligence, communication, and, in the end, build trust. Teams feel safer working with leaders who are present, steady, and emotional consistent, even when workplace circumstances remain challenging or uncertain. Now, the third leadership strategy is micro-meditation. Now, many leaders dismiss meditation, believing that it requires extended silence or time away from work. Micro-meditation challenges that notion. 1 to 3 minutes of focused attention can reset the mind. Leaders can close their eyes, focus on the breath, or notice bodily sensations. And this reset reduces mental clutter and decision fatigue. And over time, these short practices improve concentration and resilience. Micro-meditation is practical, accessible, and effective. It fits between meetings and before presentations or after stressful interactions without disrupting productivity or professional responsibilities throughout the workday. Now, the fourth leadership strategy is mindful communication. Stress narrows attention and shortens patience. Leaders under pressure often listen to respond rather than to understand. Mindful communication restores balance. It requires full attention, fewer interruptions, and thoughtful pauses before speaking. Now, this approach improves clarity and reduces conflict. It goes without saying that teams feel respected when leaders are fully present to them. Misunderstandings decrease, collaboration improves, and mindful communication does not slow down the leaders. It strengthens them. And leaders who communicate mindfully create environments where people feel heard, valued, motivated, even during difficult conversations or high-pressure organizational transitions. Now, the fifth leadership strategy is boundary awareness. Stress intensifies when boundaries erode. Leaders model healthy boundaries by scheduling breaks, ending meetings on time, disconnecting when possible. And this behavior sets cultural norms. When leaders respect boundaries, we know their teams follow. And in fact, if you listen to our podcast on boundary awareness, where I point out that boundary awareness supports long-term performance and prevents burnout. You can find this within this channel. Sustainable leadership requires energy management, not constant output. Mindfulness helps leaders maintain focus, well-being, and effectiveness while consistently meeting professional expectations and organizational responsibilities. Consider a senior manager leading a high-pressure department with rising turnover and a lot of tension. Instead of adding more demands, she introduced brief breathing pauses at the start of meetings, and she practiced mindful listening and openly acknowledged stress. And over time, communication improved, defensiveness decreased. Team members felt safer expressing concerns, engagement increased, and performance stabilized. Nothing about the workload changed immediately, but the emotional climate really shifted. Mindful leadership transformed how stress was experienced, and this example illustrates that leadership presence often matters more than leadership pressure, particularly when navigating complexity and sustained workplace demands in evolving organizational environments. Another example involves a team leader overwhelmed by constant interruptions and competing priorities. Stress made him reactive and impatient. He began practicing micromanagement or micro-meditation between tasks, using 1 minute to reset his focus. He recognized his tension and adjusted his pace accordingly. And within weeks, his productivity improved, but more importantly, his interactions became calmer and more intentional. Colleagues noticed, and although stress was still present, it no longer dictated his behavior. Mindful practices allowed him to lead with clarity rather than urgency. And small habits produced a meaningful leadership and transformation without requiring major structural changes or additional resources. Stress management is not about eliminating pressure from leadership roles. Leadership will always involve responsibility, accountability, and a tremendous amount of challenges. And this goal is to prevent stress from dictating decisions, behavior, and relationships. Mindfulness equips leaders with internal tools to remain steady under pressure. It strengthens emotional regulation and resilience. And over time, mindful practices reshape stress responses, and leaders become less reactive and more intentional. Now, this shift benefits individuals and organizations alike. So what happens when leaders manage stress effectively and consistently? Well, reduced burnout, improved morale, and stronger collaboration emerge, particularly if they are in demanding professional environments and really difficult workplace cultures. Mindful leadership also improves organizational outcomes. Teams led by mindful leaders experience clearer communication, less conflict, and greater psychological safety. People perform better when they feel supported rather than pressured. I also find that mindfulness supports ethical decision-making. Ethical leaders slow down their impulse reactions and improve their focus in times of complex and uncertain situations. And through their behavior, their actions, they send powerful messages of ethics and values that improve culture. Now, these behaviors influence culture more than policies ever could. And stress management becomes embedded rather than mandated. And over time, organizations benefit from healthy leadership, improved retention, and more adaptive responses to change. Now, today's call to action is really quite simple and practical. So choose one mindful strategy this week. It could be practicing intentional breathing before meetings, using micro meditation between tasks, pausing before responding to stress, protecting boundaries. But always remember that consistency matters more than intensity, as mindfulness grows through repetition and not through perfection. Leadership development is not about adding more effort. It's about improving awareness and discipline. Small daily practices create meaningful change. Leaders who manage stress mindfully lead with clarity, confidence, and presence, even when circumstances remain demanding and unpredictable. Now, whether that be throughout their professional life or within their organizational responsibilities. Leadership does not require constant urgency. It requires presence, clarity, emotional steadiness. Stress will persist, but it need not dominate leadership behavior. Mindfulness offers leaders a practical way to stay grounded while meeting expectations. It enables leaders to respond thoughtfully rather than react automatically. When leaders manage stress effectively, teams perform better, decision-making improves, and trust grows. And how you respond to stress defines your leadership more than stress itself. So choose awareness, choose intention, choose sustainable leadership that supports performance, people, and purpose in your workplace environment. Now, thank you for listening, folks. Our next coaching talks will explore how leaders can foster gratitude in the workplace. I hope you can join us for this important session. I'm Richard Fontanie, signing off for now. See you next Wednesday, if not before. Bye now.